You ever see someone so entitled that they think the rules don't apply to them? Well, that's exactly what happened when I caught Karen from my HOA parking in a disabled spot without a placard, then screaming at me like I was the bad guy. The day started like any other. I pulled into our HOA community center's parking lot, ready to drop off some forms. It was quiet, the kind of morning where you expect peace. But then, I saw her. Karen. The woman who had a reputation in our neighborhood for being loud, nosy, and always acting like she was the president of the world, even though she wasn't even on the HOA board. She swung her shiny SUV right into the disabled parking space closest to the entrance. At first, I thought maybe she had a placard. But as I walked by, I looked up at her rearview mirror. Nothing. Not a tag, not a card, just an empty hook. Now, I wasn't trying to cause drama, but my grandfather is in a wheelchair, and I know how badly people who actually need those spots depend on them. So, I politely said, "Excuse me, do you have a placard? This spot's for disabled drivers." That's when it all exploded. Karen's face turned red, and she snapped, "Mind your own business. Who do you think you are, the parking police? Back off." She slammed her car door and stormed toward me, pointing a finger like I'd just insulted her entire family tree. My heart pounded, but I stayed calm. "Ma'am," I said evenly, "this spot is for people who need it. It's against the law to park here without a placard." She laughed in my face. "Oh, please. Nobody else is using it. And what are you gonna do about it? Call the cops? Good luck with that." The arrogance in her voice made the entire parking lot feel tense. And the worst part? People were starting to notice. A couple of neighbors glanced our way, whispering to each other. Karen smirked like she was winning some kind of battle, but little did she know, I had just pulled out my phone. Not to scream. Not to fight. But to record. And that's when things started to take a turn. As soon as I held up my phone, Karen's expression shifted. Her confidence cracked just a little, like she hadn't expected anyone to challenge her entitlement with proof. "What do you think you're doing?" she shrieked, her voice echoing across the lot. "You can't record me. That's illegal." Now, I knew my rights. We were in a public place, and I wasn't harassing her, I was simply documenting what was happening. Calmly, I replied, "Ma'am, this is a public parking lot. I'm just making sure everything is clear." That only made her angrier. She stomped closer, jabbing her finger in the air like a sword. "Delete it. Delete it right now, or you're gonna regret this." By this time, a couple of neighbors had pulled out their phones too. It was like her performance had turned into a show for the whole community. Karen, of course, didn't realize that her own actions were making her look worse with every second. I tried to de-escalate. "Look, Karen, I'm not trying to embarrass you. But this spot is reserved for people who genuinely need it. My grandfather." She cut me off, yelling, "I don't care about your sob stories. I needed this spot. End of discussion." Needed? That word hung in the air like a bad smell. She wasn't limping, she wasn't struggling, she was carrying a designer handbag and moving with the energy of someone ready for a shopping spree. One neighbor, a retired Army vet named Mr. Daniels, spoke up. "Karen, you can't park there. You know the rules." But instead of listening, she turned on him. "Oh, stay out of this, old man. You don't know what you're talking about." The crowd gasped. Disrespecting me was one thing, but insulting Mr. Daniels, who was beloved in our community, was a new low. Karen crossed her arms and smirked. "Go ahead. Post your little video. I'll have the HOA on my side before you can blink. I've got connections, unlike you." That's when I realized something important. Karen wasn't just entitled. She believed she was untouchable. She thought her so-called influence in the HOA would protect her. But she had no idea what was coming. Because if there's one thing people like Karen underestimate, it's the power of truth and a community fed up with her antics. And that truth was about to hit harder than she could imagine. The situation wasn't cooling down, in fact, it was heating up faster than I could process. Karen, standing just inches from my phone, crossed her arms and gave me the kind of glare you'd expect from someone guarding a throne. "You think you're a hero? Recording me like this?" she hissed. "I'll make sure the HOA finds you. You'll be sorry." The crowd murmured. Some of the neighbors exchanged glances, clearly tired of her intimidation games. Everyone in our community knew Karen loved to throw around the HOA's name like it was her personal army, even though she wasn't even on the board. I calmly lowered my phone, keeping it recording at my side. "Karen, nobody here wants trouble. Just move your car to a regular space and this is over." Her laugh was sharp and mocking. "Oh, you don't get it, do you? I'm not moving. I parked here because I deserve it. My time is more valuable than yours, or anyone else's." That was the moment people started whispering louder. Her words exposed her entitlement in plain daylight. Mr. Daniels, the retired vet, stepped forward again. "Karen, this isn't about time. It's about respect. What if someone who actually needed that spot came along?" But Karen just waved him off like swatting a fly. "If they need it so badly, they can wait. Simple as that." The audacity left people stunned. A mother standing nearby, holding her young daughter's hand, whispered, "She really doesn't care about anyone." I felt my frustration rising, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Karen, you're embarrassing yourself in front of everyone. Please, just do the right thing." Her response. She whipped out her phone and started recording me. "Two can play this game. I'll tell the board you harassed me, and I'll have proof." Except her proof only showed a man standing quietly while she shouted like a siren. I could see the cracks forming. The more she ranted, the more the neighbors looked disgusted. Karen thought she was winning, but she was actually digging her own grave, one arrogant word at a time. Little did she know, the HOA itself was about to get involved. Just when I thought things couldn't escalate further, a sleek black sedan pulled into the lot. Out stepped Mrs. Whitaker, the actual HOA president. She was a calm, sharp woman who didn't tolerate nonsense. The crowd immediately quieted as she walked toward us, her heels clicking against the pavement. "What's going on here?" she asked firmly. Karen lit up like she'd been rescued. "Oh, thank goodness you're here. This man is harassing me just because I parked my car." She gestured wildly at me, twisting the story like she always did. But Mrs. Whitaker wasn't the type to take words at face value. Her eyes narrowed. "Harassing you? Or holding you accountable?" Karen gasped as if insulted. "Excuse me. I've been part of this community for years. I deserve some respect." The president folded her arms. "Respect is earned, Karen. And right now, you're parked in a disabled spot without a placard." The crowd seemed to exhale in relief. Finally, someone with authority had called her out. Karen's defense was immediate. "It was just for a minute. Nobody was using it. Why does everyone care so much?" That was when Mrs. Whitaker dropped the hammer. "Because, Karen, it's the law. And you're setting a terrible example for our neighborhood. Imagine if everyone thought rules didn't apply to them." Karen's face flushed crimson. She looked around, but for the first time, nobody was supporting her. Not a single neighbor backed her up. Trying to claw back some power, she snapped, "Well, if you find me, I'll sue the HOA. I know my rights." But Mrs. Whitaker stayed calm. "You're welcome to try. But first, you'll need to move your vehicle. Right now." The silence was thick. Karen glanced at her car, then back at the crowd. Her pride was fighting a losing battle against the pressure of dozens of eyes. Finally, with a dramatic sigh, she muttered, "Fine." She stormed back to her SUV and yanked open the door. But if anyone thought this was over, they were wrong. Because as Karen started her engine, she rolled down her window and shouted, "This isn't the last you'll hear of this. You'll all regret embarrassing me." And with that, she sped out of the lot, nearly clipping the curb in her rage. Everyone stood stunned. But I knew, this was just round one. Karen didn't take humiliation lightly. By the next morning, whispers spread around the neighborhood. She had filed a complaint with the HOA, claiming she was targeted and bullied. When I checked my mailbox, there it was, a letter from the HOA requesting a meeting to discuss an incident involving community harassment. I shook my head. Of course. Karen was trying to flip the narrative, painting herself as the victim. I showed up to the HOA office ready to explain my side. But when I walked in, Karen was already there, smiling smugly like she owned the place. "Well, look who decided to show up," she sneered. "Hope you've got a good excuse for filming and harassing me." The board members exchanged confused glances. Mrs. Whitaker, seated at the head of the table, motioned for me to sit. "We'll hear both sides." Karen launched into her performance, her voice trembling with fake emotion. I was minding my own business when he attacked me verbally, shoved a phone in my face, and made me feel unsafe. I thought I was going to be assaulted. Gasps rippled across the room. She was good, too good. If I hadn't been there, I might have believed her. Then, it was my turn. Without saying a word, I placed my phone on the table and hit play. The video filled the room, Karen yelling, Karen mocking Mr. Daniels, Karen refusing to move her car. Every lie she told crumbled in seconds. When the recording ended, silence hung in the air. The board members' expressions shifted from doubt, to disbelief, to anger. Mrs. Whitaker leaned forward. "Karen, care to explain this?" Karen stammered, her face pale. "That's edited." He edited it. But nobody was buying it. For the first time, I saw Karen truly rattled. Her grip on the community was slipping, and the truth had exposed her. But little did I know, she wasn't done fighting. Because Karen wasn't the type to back down quietly. She was about to make things even uglier. Karen wasn't going to accept defeat. After being exposed at the HOA meeting, she went on a mission to smear my name around the neighborhood. Flyers showed up on doorsteps claiming I was a troublemaker who stalked residents with cameras. Someone even made a fake Facebook group post suggesting I was trying to take over the HOA by getting rid of people like her. I didn't need to guess who was behind it. Karen's fingerprints were all over the lies. At first, it got under my skin. A few neighbors gave me cautious looks, unsure what to believe. But then, something unexpected happened. People who had seen the incident firsthand began speaking up. Mr. Daniels knocked on my door one evening. "Don't let her get to you, son. Folks know what really happened. She's digging her own grave." Even the mother who'd stood in the parking lot with her daughter left a supportive note in my mailbox. "We believe you. Thank you for standing up for what's right." The smear campaign was backfiring. The more Karen tried to paint me as the villain, the more people remembered her screaming, her arrogance, and her disrespect toward the disabled spot. Still, Karen wasn't finished. One evening, I caught her pacing near my driveway, phone in hand, pretending to inspect the sidewalk. When I stepped outside, she smirked. "Just making sure you're not breaking any HOA rules. Wouldn't want you to get a fine." Her harassment was getting personal. But instead of confronting her, I documented everything, photos, timestamps, even witness statements. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't just about a parking spot anymore. It was about power. Karen had built her identity on being untouchable, the loudest voice in the neighborhood. Now that her mask was slipping, she was fighting tooth and nail to hold on to it. But her desperation was showing. And soon, the HOA board, and the entire community, would see her for who she really was. 2 weeks later, the HOA called a special meeting. Word spread quickly, it wasn't just about neighborhood concerns. Everyone knew this was about Karen. The community hall was packed. Neighbors filled every chair, some even standing in the back. The energy was electric, like everyone was waiting for a long overdue showdown. Mrs. Whitaker opened the meeting calmly. "We're here to address recent incidents involving parking violations, false reports, and harassment." Karen strutted to the front, acting like she was about to win an award. "I'd like to start by saying I've been unfairly targeted. Certain residents," she shot a glare at me, "are trying to destroy my reputation." A low murmur spread through the crowd. People were tired of her performance. When it was my turn, I stood and simply played the video again. The footage of Karen screaming, mocking, and refusing to move her car echoed through the hall. This time, I also shared the photos of her pacing near my house and the flyers she'd distributed. One by one, neighbors stood up. "Mr. Daniels, she disrespected our veterans. The young mother, she scared my daughter with her yelling." Even quiet residents, who usually avoided conflict, admitted they'd been harassed by her in the past. Karen's face turned pale as the tide shifted completely. She tried to argue, but her voice cracked. "They're all lying. This is a setup." But it was too late. The room wasn't buying her act anymore. Mrs. Whitaker finally raised her hand. Silence fell. "Karen, the board has reviewed the evidence and listened to the community. Effective immediately, you are fined for repeated violations and harassment. And if this behavior continues, further legal action will be taken." The room erupted in quiet cheers and nods of approval. For the first time, Karen looked small. Not powerful, not intimidating, just a woman who had pushed too far and finally lost. She stormed out of the hall, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. Everyone exhaled in relief. After months of her bullying, the neighborhood finally stood together. But deep down, I wondered, was this really the end of Karen? In the days following the HOA meeting, things felt lighter. Neighbors greeted each other with smiles, the tension in the air seemed to vanish, and for once, nobody had to worry about Karen patrolling the streets like a self-appointed cop. Her SUV was noticeably absent from the community center. She parked far away from the entrance now, avoiding the spotlight she used to crave. But while peace returned for most, I couldn't shake the feeling Karen was still plotting. She wasn't the type to let go quietly. Sure enough, a week later, I received a letter in the mail, this time from her personal lawyer. It accused me of defamation and emotional distress, demanding an apology and monetary damages. I nearly laughed. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and everyone had witnessed her behavior. But still, being dragged into legal threats was stressful. I forwarded everything to the HOA's attorney. Within days, the lawyer replied with a blunt statement. "We have extensive video and witness evidence against your client. Pursue this further, and we will countersue." After that, the silence was deafening. Karen's legal bluff had failed. Word of the failed lawsuit spread quickly. Neighbors shook their heads, muttering, "Classic Karen." For the first time, I realized something powerful: her control over the community was gone. People weren't afraid of her anymore. She had burned every bridge with her arrogance. And me? I felt relief. Not because I'd won anything, but because the truth had stood its ground. Still, I knew the story wasn't just about me, it was about all of us learning that standing up, staying calm, and sticking to the truth was the only way to deal with someone who thrived on chaos. Karen might still live among us, but her reign of intimidation was finally over. Or so we thought. Just when everyone believed the storm had passed, Karen tried one last desperate move. It was a Saturday morning when neighbors gathered for a community cleanup event. Families, kids, even the elderly showed up to pitch in. It was the kind of thing that made our neighborhood feel alive. And then Karen appeared. She marched straight to the center, clipboard in hand, barking orders as if she was suddenly in charge again. "You, pick up those branches. And you, rake faster. Don't just stand there." The crowd froze, stunned by her audacity. After everything, she was trying to reclaim control. I stepped forward. "Karen, nobody appointed you to run this event. We're here to work together." She snapped back, "Oh please. Without leadership, this whole thing will be chaos. Clearly, none of you can handle it." Her words struck a nerve. People who had stayed silent before finally spoke up. One father shouted, "Karen, enough. We're tired of your bullying." Another neighbor added, "We don't need you to boss us around anymore." The group united, voices overlapping in agreement. For the first time, the entire community openly pushed back in real time. Karen's face twisted with rage. She stomped her foot like a child throwing a tantrum. "Fine. Run it yourselves. Don't come crying to me when everything falls apart." And with that, she stormed off, again. Only this time, there was no dramatic audience, no silent fear. Just laughter. Neighbors chuckled, shaking their heads. Kids whispered, "That's the mean lady," and giggled. Karen had gone from feared to ridiculed. Her final attempt at control had collapsed in front of everyone. And at that moment, I knew, this was the true ending. Karen's power was gone, not because of fines, or legal threats, or even the HOA. But because the neighborhood finally stood together and refused to let her entitlement rule anymore. Weeks passed. The parking lot incident became more of a neighborhood story people told with half-shocked laughter. "Remember when Karen thought she was above the law," became almost a running joke at block parties. As for Karen, she grew quieter. Her SUV was still there, but it stayed in regular spots now. She no longer shouted at neighbors, and while she still gave me the occasional glare, she avoided direct confrontations. It wasn't that she had changed, it was that she no longer had an audience. Looking back, I realized the story wasn't really about her at all. It was about what happens when entitlement meets accountability. If I had shouted back at her, or lost my temper, I might have become the villain in her twisted version of events. But by staying calm, recording the truth, and letting the community see for themselves, the outcome was clear. It reminded me of something my grandfather once told me: you can't fight fire with fire. Sometimes, you fight it with water. And sometimes, you just let it burn itself out. Karen's fire had burned too hot for too long. And eventually, it consumed her reputation more than it ever touched mine. The disabled parking spot stood empty most days now, waiting for the people who truly needed it. And every time I passed by, I thought of that moment when Karen screamed at me to back off. Funny thing is, by refusing to back off, I didn't just stand up for myself. I stood up for everyone who had been quietly bullied, ignored, or steamrolled by her entitlement. And that's the lesson I carry with me: rules aren't just words on paper, they exist to protect people. When someone decides they're above them, it's up to the rest of us to hold the line. Because at the end of the day, entitlement only wins when good people stay silent. But in our neighborhood, silence was finally broken.